Welcome to this edition of CEO Corner. I'm Otis Rawl, President and CEO of the South Carolina Chamber of Commerce, and we're happy to have with us today Superintendent Mick Zais. Superintendent, thank you for being with us today.
Otis, it's my pleasure being here. Thank you for the invitation.
Well, I know it's been, you've been all over the state, talking to business leaders, community people, talking to educators about education. What are you finding out, and how's your message being accepted around the state?
Well, what we've known all along is that while South Carolina has some of the best schools in the country, we also have some of the most troubled schools in the country. And we have everything in between, which is why a one-size-fits-all program or solutions or supervision from the top doesn't really work. I mean, we know that what works in an affluent suburban school may not make sense in a poor rural school, and vice versa. And that's really one of the reasons that I've lobbied and worked to have less direction out of Washington, and frankly, less direction out of the South Carolina Department of Education, and more local control and local decision making, so that local people can choose the educational environments that best fit for their children.
Well, I know that all the research that we do and the statistics we look at indicates that reading is probably the best indicator of a child's success or a child's ascending and graduating from high school. And I know that's one of the focuses that you're really concentrating on, is reading. What are your plans for instituting changes in the reading, or what are you going to do to try to enhance that?
Otis, you're absolutely right. Reading is fundamental. Basically, in grades kindergarten through 3rd grade, we teach kids how to read. And then from 4th grade through 12th grade, they read to learn. And we don't teach reading past the 3rd grade. But if a kid enters 4th grade not reading on grade level, they are going to fall farther and farther behind each year because they simply cannot understand the science textbook or their social studies assignment or even their math homework.
Right.
We've got to teach kids to read. Sadly, over 1/3 of the 4th graders in South Carolina begin 4th grade functionally illiterate, and 2/3 read below grade level. And we have got to get those kids reading on grade level before they get into 4th grade.
Well, I saw a statistic the other day that I mean, if you invert the numbers, it was like 38% of the kids that go into the 4th grade can't read on grade level. And if you look at our graduation rate, it's about 72 or 73%. So it almost translates directly into what happens.
Directly. The kids who don't graduate from high school are in large measure the same kids who enter 4th grade not reading on grade level.
Well, can you talk a little bit, Mr. Superintendent, about what your plan is on trying to improve or focusing on reading? What are we going to do? What can the business community help you do to focus and get those kids that aren't on grade level to grade level?
I think the most important thing is for the businesses to partner with their local schools. And I don't see that as being directed by some program here in Columbia, but I see that being the product of the initiative of thousands of business men and women across the state working in conjunction with their local schools. One of the things we know is that kids from language-rich homes who've been exposed to standard English with precise pronunciation, extensive vocabularies, correct grammar, who've been read to, are going to learn to read significantly easier than children who do not have that advantage and who come from language-poor homes. Sadly, we've got an education system that puts all those kids in the same classroom, expects them to learn the same material on the same schedule, and that simply doesn't work. We need to have separate reading programs for youngsters based on their entry level. We also know that kids from language-poor homes have decreases during the summer period in their reading level because there are no books at home or magazines and their parents are not reading to them, while kids from affluent homes, their reading level improves over the summer. And while they're learning at the same schedule and same rate during the school year, the gap gets bigger over the summer, and over the course of 3 and 4 summers, that gap gets bigger and bigger. We need some kind of summer reading programs for our poor kids. Now, I was reading a study recently that contrasted 2 different summer reading programs for poor kids. One of them was summer school, and it cost $1,500 per student. Another one, they took the children to a large book fair and said, pick out 10 books that you want to read this summer. And they were books that the kids were interested in and that were written on their grade level. But the kids got to choose them, not the teachers.
Right.
And you know what? There was no difference in results. But the book program cost $50 per student versus $1,500 for the summer program. So that's an example of how research can show us how to get the biggest return on taxpayer dollar.
Right.
And that's what I've been looking for as superintendent. How can we invest our education dollar to get the biggest return in student learning?
It's proverbial, you know, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. But if you give them or entice them with something that they really want, they could do it. And I don't think kids are any different than adults. If it's fun and they enjoy doing it, they're going to do it. So
you're right, Otis. I was really late learning to read. I'm dyslexic, and I would see the word was and say saw or vice versa. And of course, we didn't know what that word was when I was coming up in the 50s. But I learned to read from comic books,
right.
And because that was one thing I could get a visual clue, and the word would help me. And so other kids were reading what they now call chapter books.
Right.
I was reading comic books. Why? Because that's about the only thing I could read. But my father was wise enough to know that if he could get me to read anything, that was a good thing.
Yeah.
So he encouraged and subsidized my comic book collection.
Well, I was comic books and sport, anything that had to do with sports, I was the same way.